In this episode, Dr. Eric Westman interviews me and we talk about my carnivore journey, what got me to start carnivore, my history prior to that, and all the stuff I was suffering with before carnivore. And then we talk about the nuances of a carnivore elimination diet. How many carbs could we even eat if we try to do a carnivore-ish diet? What we see in healing, what is alpha gal? We also talk about certain nuances that I see in my practice when we work with some of the most chronically ill. I now eat a lot of meat, and so do they. If you want to thrive, you need to eat meat. Meat is required. Hey guys, my name is Judy Cho and I'm board certified in holistic nutrition, and I have a private functional medicine practice where we focus on root cause healing, and that often starts with the Carnivore Cures all meat elimination diet. Today I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Eric Westman. I was on his channel a while back and he asked me about all things carnivore. I believe Dr. Eric Westman built a carnivore group, and so you may want to check that out. But in this conversation, we talk about little nuances of applications of how to do a carnivore diet that works for you. We talk about alpha gal and if we see it in our practice. And we also talk about how carnivore can help us and how to implement it for the long term. Let's get right into this interview.
Welcome back to my channel. And today I have Judy Cho to talk to today. Thanks for being on my podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So we met a few years ago, and but imagine you're talking to people who are following me. And how did you get into this world? How did you get into the carnivore diet? And as if someone had never met you before.
Yeah. So my name is Judy Cho. I am a board certified holistic nutritionist. I have a private functional medicine practice. We do all things carnivore, getting people to root cause healing. But I actually started as a management consultant. I was plant-based for about 12 years, and I could attribute that to going to Berkeley or UC Berkeley. And so I became plant-based, and it was really just,
You had no choice.
yeah, sort of. I mean, yes, it's heavily plant-based there, but I thought it was the best thing to do for my health. And so I used to eat big bowl salads. There wasn't a lot of the Beyond Meats weren't out. Boca burgers were out. So I would eat that occasionally, but it was really like big bowl salads, low fat. And I started noticing that I was getting sick. And sick, I mean, there were two things. So one, I was struggling with mood imbalances, but I also went off to college. So I thought maybe I struggle with depression because I'm in college, or I'm struggling because I'm away from my family. And then secondly, I started having this desire to binge, and I didn't even know what that was, but I would be really quote unquote good. And all day I'm eating, plant-based vegetables, all the things you could think of. And then at night, I had this incredible urge that I needed to go and binge. And so some days when I'm really strong and really disciplined, I wouldn't do that. And I would just have like a gallon of green tea or hot tea. And then, but the remaining times I would then go to the store and I would binge off of all of the most processed, high fat, but plant-based foods you could think of. So all the junk foods were on the table as long as there was no meat on it. And I lived that life for probably about 12 years. So I never thought once that it was a diet. I thought something was broken in me. I went to a therapist. They told me I had an eating disorder. And then even in therapy, they were just telling me that, oh, I think you suffer from depression, anxiety, etc. And so then I even got on medications. And the thing is that I wasn't getting much better. So fast forward time, I get married and I have my first child, and I suffer from really severe postpartum depression, or that's at least what they defined it as. And I end up going into the hospital because I had this mental break. To this day, they don't know what it was. And so then I go in there and they say, we think she's actually suffering from a severe eating disorder and postpartum depression. So we think she should go into a eating disorder facility to get more in-depth care. So I sort of lost my memory during that time because I had a psychotic break, I think. And so in there, I learned great tools of mindful eating, intuitive eating, but I was still plant-based the whole time. And they were teaching me how to eat correctly. And yet I would still end up falling, binging, purging, and all those things. And in that interim, I had to go on disability because I literally lost my memory. And so my brother happened to just find the keto diet, And I was out to actually prove him wrong and that he would die from adding sticks of butter to his coffee in the morning. And crazy enough, I ran into your book, The Keto Clarity, and realized that everything I knew was wrong. And so then I went on this journey of,
Or
yes,
incomplete, perhaps, not wrong.
okay, fine. Fair enough. Incomplete. Yes, incomplete and misinformed information. And so I actually started a keto diet with plant-based. So then I started adding the olive oils, avocado oils, but still eating strictly plant-based. Occasionally I would have some fish, so I guess technically it's pescatarian, but for the most part, I was eating big bowl salads with tons of olive oil, maybe having some eggs, but generally speaking, it was just plants like the quinoa, the garbanzo beans, the hummus. And again, I learned the tools in that therapy, but I wasn't healing enough. And so then I would end up binging and purging and then eating all the bad things. And I finally, a friend told me, hey, there's this crazy diet online called carnivore, why don't you try it? Because I've heard some miraculous stories with depression, with, all of these other chronic illnesses. And I said, that is crazy. I would never do that. That is so bad for you. And so I stuck to my keto plant-based diet for a while longer until I was one day in the bathroom where that's where you do your purging. And I said, it's enough. Like I'm at a point of desperation, at a point of I just would prefer to sleep forever type thing. And so I said, I'm going to try it. And so for the first time in 12 years, I had a first bite of ground beef. I ended up throwing up and I think it was more psychosomatic. I think it was just in my head. But the second time I had meat, it was great. And then I continued and I thought I would just do it for a little while just to see. And within I would say 2 weeks to maybe a month, the physical desire of wanting to go out and binge, I'm so sorry, my husband, I have to still go out and do the things I promised you I wouldn't do. Like I cannot control myself. That actually went away. The physical desire, the emotional, I'm still turning to food for X reason was something that I think maybe people need for therapy. But if you can strengthen the body and nourish the body properly, that battle becomes somewhat easier. So I knew that there was something to this, and then I started digging deeply into nutrition.
Yeah. So tell me, so like a lot of people, it was your own personal experience that led you to write books and get it, the deeper dive that is extremely powerful. And now we know from other people in the metabolic mind, the Bazooki Foundation, that the keto diet, whether it be carnivore or however, whatever variation of it, has mental health benefits. Now, we don't know for how many people, but certainly for some. So that kind of makes sense looking back. The binge eating now, Dr. Shabani Seppi at Stanford is actually doing clinical trials using the exact opposite of what dietitians are taught, right? The dietitian is taught not to do what you're doing, which is to restrict for binging or eating disorders. So as you got into this, tell me the process of learning, and did you learn again that there shouldn't be a restrictive diet for eating disorders, and did you have to go against that, or I just curious?
Yeah.
You
Yeah. So the eating disorder facility I went to as a actual patient, I was there for about 10 to 12 hours a day. So we weren't actually, we didn't stay overnight. There's higher care where they do that. I didn't get covered by insurance to do that. So that's why I did the 10 to 12 hours. And in there, you worked with a dietitian, you worked with a therapist, and you worked with a psychiatrist. So psychiatrist gives you meds, which I was on. And the biggest question I started having is, well, that's weird. I went on the highest dose of antidepressants. I was specifically on Zoloft for a few months. And then I got onto the highest dose and I didn't see a huge change. And then they're like, well, maybe you need to also get on antipsychotics. So then I got on Zyprexa and all of these other medications that, again, was making me not fully better. And so that's when I started thinking maybe there's something beyond this. But in the facility, the dietitian, it was so interesting because now looking back, they were super against you being low carb. So if you were like, I don't eat carbs, I don't eat sugar, they're like, that is an eating disorder. But they completely respected that I don't eat any meat. So they're like, oh, you're plant-based, totally cool. We will absolutely not require you
It's
to
the
eat meat.
so that's an acceptable kind of restrictive diet.
Yes, yeah, totally, totally. And so they would require you, so in there they had you eat 3 full meals, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then you had 2 snacks, and after every meal, you would have to write down what you're feeling and what you're going through. And the meals were very, very, very processed, so they would have at lunch, for example, they would give you these microwavable pizzas that were in plastic cases and that you would have to eat, and then if you didn't eat everything, you were still sick. And then they would have a challenge food, and the challenge food was always something very processed. So a cupcake, a cookie, some dessert. And if you didn't eat that and then you didn't feel well sitting there after, mind you, there's a ton of sugar and processed foods and seed oils, but they would then say, "Oh, you're still sick. You're still sick because you're having these thoughts of eating disorders, anxiety, and all of that." And then there were people that if you didn't eat your meals, you would sort of get dinged for it. And after a certain amount of meals that you didn't eat, you were forced in a private room, literally by yourself. And maybe sometimes they would get a therapist or a helper. And you would have to drink a full glass of Ensure, which has supposedly all the nutrients, but it's filled with seed oils and high fructose corn syrup. And then if you didn't eat that, eventually you would get on and forced on higher care where you would have to sleep through the night and stuff. So it's so
The prevailing wisdom is let you eat any food. No, force
any food, as long as it fits
Force
the
you.
carbohydrate, fat, and protein macros that they had.
And then if you're not, if you are tugged toward the food, then they'll adjust the medication.
Hey guys, just a really quick break. Nutrition with Judy's private practice is now called Empower Functional Health. I started as a nutritional therapist, but we have become much more all-encompassing. At Empower Functional Health, we do functional medicine, chronic illness, autoimmune, gut health, environmental illness such as SIRS, mold illness, Lyme. Regardless of all these names, the goal for us is always to get you root cause healing answers. And of course, carnivore, the all meat elimination diet is always on the table. Food, the right food, is always medicine. We offer functional tests, prescription meds, and really everything to get you closer to root cause, where you can just eat the meats you enjoy and live the life that you are meant to symptom-free. The goal is to get off meds, supplements, and everything else that your body no longer needs support in. Our practice, whether it's Nutrition with Judy, sharing podcasts and free content, or our private practice, Empower Functional Health, our goal is to support you guys in the barbell theory. We give a lot of free content, our evidence-based research. We don't use Substack. We give all our stuff away for free. We interview with the best and make it super tactical so you have clinical pearls that you can walk away with and try in your own healing journey. And then we work with some people in a smaller subset, one-on-one, to provide that level of personalized care. And as we heal these people that are chronically ill, we find these clinical pearls and golden nuggets that we can share then more publicly so that we can make wellness for all. Hopefully, the content and the guides and the free stuff we give out is enough for you to heal. But if it's not, you can always come and work with us in our private practice so that you can get more personalized care. If you want to learn more, make sure to check out empowerfunctionalhealth.com.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, everyone was on medication. So everyone would meet the psychiatrist, and that psychiatrist in there told me, oh, after hearing your entire story, you were always slightly mildly depressed. And so getting on meds, because I was like, oh, I don't know if I really want to get on medications. They said, if somebody breaks their arm and they need to get on a little bit of Tylenol every day until they're better, there's nothing wrong with getting on antidepressants and taking a little bit every day. Because if you have a broken arm, you would take it. So what? And so that logic made sense to me. So I was like, okay, if this will help me get back to my family and have a normal quote unquote life, then I'm willing to do that. But it just didn't work. And so most people on there were at least on 3 medications, an antidepressant, an anti-anxiety, and then some people were on a antipsychotic.
So how long did this go on, and when did you have an aha moment?
Yeah, so I was in there for about a few weeks until insurance kicked me out, and then I went on I was still in care, but it was a lot less. And it was then around that time that my brother, I found out he did the keto diet. And I think once I learned and then I went through I started eating carnivore, I got really mad, right? So I genuinely believe that I was broken, that I was mildly depressed my whole life, and that I need the medications to be better. And then once I got on carnivore, I think faith played a part in my healing too. So the therapy really helped of what are my needs, what are my wants, what is my the needs that I need to share with like my loved ones. So that really helped. But I think what really happened is I started getting really mad that I don't actually feel depressed anymore. And so I weaned myself off the medications and I slowly just got off. Thank God I didn't have an adverse reaction. And I think it's because I used it for less than a year. But I started eating carnivore. I wasn't having those cravings at night. And then that made me dig deep into all the books, all the books that were written when Keto Clarity came out. And then I had young children by then that I decided I want to go back to nutrition and understand the anatomy and the biology of the body so that I can at least feed my children well. Because something happened in me where now I'm healing by eating meat. I don't understand why, but I do want to understand. And so then what I went back to therapy I went to back to nutritional therapy school during disability. And I learned so much in that time. And out of pure boredom, I started sharing graphics online because I was a consultant who created PowerPoints and presentations for C-suite people. I used that, I guess, creative knowledge to then use it for carnivore because there was no carnivore pyramids, only keto. And I shared it under a fake name because I just wanted to put a creative outlet out there while I was on disability. And it sort of took off. And I never once thought I would change my career because I really was doing this for my own healing and then to feed my kids right. But I started sharing and I noticed a lot of people are sick. And I just felt like if I could just create one book, just like Keto Clarity did for me, and I could just share all the things I learned and why I'm so upset about it. If I could just give back to the community that helped me heal in an indirect way, then that's sort of how I fell into everything.
Yeah, and so I guess the uh, idea that eating disorder is treating the food reminded me of Rob Lustig's statement that good food is medicine, bad food requires medicine. Or it's basically we're treating the food effect on you. And most doctors don't understand the benefit of food or how powerful it can be in helping or in harming. And then you bring out the pretty stark reality that a plant-based approach, takes away all animal product, and a carnivore-based approach takes away all plant-based plant thing. They're very similar, and their restrictiveness. Yet one has almost brainwashed people.
Yeah, I think it's knowing a lot of like what I've learned, and now that we've worked with so many different carnivore clients and patients, it's really, I think when I look back to how I was suffering, one, I was eating low fat, and I don't think that was the only reason because I also did keto, a plant-based version of keto. So, but it did help a lot. So there was a level of satiation. Your hormones, your sex hormones, cortisol, all needs a sufficient amount of cholesterol. But I think the big thing is the brain gut axis is very connected. Your gut feels something, it sends messengers up to your brain, and then vice versa. And when I was eating just processed foods and everything was on the table. Like every junk food was on the table as long as it wasn't meat. And I think my gut was in disarray. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is I also use laxatives. That was another way that I was quote unquote purging. And so my gut was in disarray. Most of your serotonin or your happy endorphins and hormones are made in your gut. And while it doesn't go to your brain per se, but all of it communicates with each other. And so as I started eating carnivore, I did use some gut supports like hydrochloric acid or digestive enzymes. But as my gut healed and I wasn't using any of those laxatives that I used for years and I was abusing those, as I healed, my brain fog, my depression, all of that was also going away. And so there is absolutely a connection of not only is it that processed foods wrecks your gut and your body, but it's also not giving enough nutrition for you to have the adequate hormones, the vitamins and minerals to get all the things in your body to work properly. And as I started feeding my body the right foods, my depression went away. I wasn't having gut issues. My immune system started healing. I mean, I used to suffer from allergies and eczema, and I don't suffer from those things anymore. And so I was getting all of these other benefits. And if you talk to my husband before carnivore, I was like, one day I was hot or I was angry or, temperamental. And if you talk to me, I would sort of, get mad at you. But then other days I would be more subdued. But I am so consistent in my mood and energy. And sure, I have days where I might be cranky, but overall, the healing that I've had through a carnivore diet, and only because I tried a carnivore diet, and as I've healed and I don't suffer ever from a day of depression, that just shows you how important what we feed is to our bodies. And we know that because when we go to the vet, they say, well, if your dog's sick, what are you feeding your dog? Yet
Correct.
we never ask that for humans.
Well, some do, but most doctors don't.
Yes. I mean, of course you do, Dr. Westman, but
Uh, I am always optimistic that there'll be more practitioners doing this. So I've been teaching 20 total gram carbs per day for over 25 years now. And I've learned a lot from my patient care for sure. And the one of the questions I have is, do you really need to go to carnivore, or is carnivore-ish with 2 cups of leafy greens, 1, cup of a non-starchy vegetable low enough on the carbs? And in my clinical experience, there are some people who eat some veg, even though it's very little veg, and then go to no veggies, and they do get a change. Like some get off a plateau, some have the arthritis symptoms going away. So I'm now kind of wondering, do you have to go carnivore? I mean, so if you start carnivore and never tried carnivore-ish that we've been teaching for 25 years, it might be just as good. I mean, and then when you're at a goal, you might be able to even go back to eating more carbs, unless there's a sensitivity, so where are you in terms of understanding from other people now? You mentioned a community, and you have a book.
yeah. So our practice works with the people that are, when carnivore doesn't work enough or diet doesn't work enough. So then we get the most complex chronically ill cases. And so we get to learn a lot from that. And so with that said, if it was just my journey, I would say everyone needs to go super strict carnivore, and then you could bring in. So I'm not super strict carnivore. I make it a point to share that because I don't want people to think perfection is the only way to heal. I know that your carb confusion also shares it's like consistency is more important than perfection, because if you're perfect one day and then you fail for 5 days, like what's the point of perfection? So, but with that said, I think it's really nuanced. It depends on the person. So if we are trying to remove diet as a factor for your chronic illness, then maybe going strict for a period is really good for you to figure out, okay,
The granddaddy of all elimination diets.
yes, exactly. Exactly. And then it's figuring out as you heal and you are healing with the diet, maybe sometimes it's environment. So it could be mold or Lyme or MCAS or something else, or even the mind body. It's viewing the world in such a negative way that it's causing you to release more cortisol in the morning. But assuming that the diet is fundamental, which I believe, then it's figuring out, okay, so if you've healed enough with carnivore or strict carnivore, where will you be your best being consistent? So I know for me, when I was eating beef, salt, and water, it lasted maybe 4 months. And I noticed that I wanted the chicken, and I noticed but people said, the stricter you are, the better you'll be. And I was struggling, even though I didn't have a food sensitivity. My thing was mood imbalances, my depression. And so I'm like, I can't eat the chicken though. I'm not allowed to. And so finally I got to a point where I'm like, I need to make this more practical. And as I ate everything in the animal kingdom, I was healing even further, and it wasn't as difficult. So I think what really matters is people finding the balance that they can be more consistent. And then if they're consistent eating carnivore-ish, so the 20 grams, but they're not healing enough, then maybe at that point, now you're already kind of adjusted to carnivore plus 20 grams. Why not remove the 20 grams just for a short bit to see if the extra healing can happen? So it's very nuanced. I wish I could just say for everybody we should do this, but it doesn't work that way. But if you are eating 20 grams carnivore and still not fully better, you can always try 0 carb carnivore and then see how you do.
Yeah, and the individual um, preferences are really important. Some people are happy as a plan to just eat meat.
Yes.
Others want the other variety, and those who don't know anything about this world say, "How could anyone ever do this?" Well, if you reverse your diabetes or fix some other severe medical issue just by changing the food, and now you're off all the medicines, of course, it's relatively easy to do this, right? Um, so
Yeah, they say it's either divine intervention or divine inspiration, or it's just being at rock bottom. Those are the two ways most people change. And for me, I would have never done a carnivore diet had I not been. I mean, I didn't share a ton in my story, but when I was in the hospital, I got off. I stopped nursing my child. I didn't even remember how I stopped nursing my first child because I lost my memory. When you get your child taken away, the number one fear of any mom is, as a first-time mom, is I will be a bad mom, and I completely failed. So when I had to go to my eating disorder facility, my mom took care of my son 1,800 miles from me. And so that is a big enough why. And then to learn that my diet was a fundamental reason I got sick, that I wasn't even able to spend New Year's with my child, that I had to stop or was forced to stop breastfeeding. All of those things could have been circumvented by eating the right diet. That is enough of a passion and a why to start saying, I'm going to help other people and share what I've learned, because no one should go through the angst, the pain that I went through. And I don't even suffer from an eating disorder anymore. I still say I'm in remission because anybody could always fall back into their addictions. But I I am healing for years now, and I will never go back to eating a lot of carbs. I might have an occasional small garden salad if I want to, but I can handle that, and I can test my boundaries of my eating disorder by doing that. But I would never, ever go back to the way I used to eat. Meat-based carnivore will always be my preference because it has given me my life back. It has allowed me to live my life with my children, be present without being in my mind with an eating disorder. And now I could serve others. And so what a great way to live.
well, so when dietitians or even the general public is first given the idea that there is such a thing as carnivore, there are all sorts of concerns about nutritional deficiencies and vitamins and where you're going to get the fiber and all this. How have you reconciled the traditional teaching with a carnivore diet?
Yeah, so one of the first things we hear is obviously vitamin C. So when I did the research for that book right there, for Carnivore Cure, the the dosage for vitamin C, I think in the 1970s was 45 milligrams for men, and in the 2000s they upped it to 90. So we have to wonder, like, what happened where now they're saying in order for a person to have a decent amount of vitamin C, it has doubled in less than 30 years. And one thing that I think it was Amber O'Hearn that found this data, but she found that the glucose receptor also competes with vitamin C. So could it be that we are eating so much more sugar than we used to do? And instead of saying, maybe we reduce the glucose or the sugar coming in that's competing with vitamin C, instead, let's just up the vitamin C amounts to then say we actually need this much more vitamin C. And then I like to also put in my logical hat of, well, my second child, which I got a do-over with for breastfeeding, he for 1 full year did not eat anything for the most part than breast milk. Breast milk has almost zero vitamin C. So how did he thrive from being a 7-pound baby to being, I don't know, 15 pounds later? So it's just that we are fed these things again, which I fully believed and became plant-based. And I was even part of PETA, or the PETA community. And I believed in all of it until I lost my health and nearly my life. And then you realize a lot of what we are fed is misinformation and incorrect. And if we think about just even 200 years ago, how many of the people that were eating meat were also getting a plethora of vegetables and fruits and all of these things? They didn't have those opportunities. And I just think that we were fed a message that is probably incorrect, and it is absolutely harmful to our health. So for vitamin C, I don't think we need as much. And we see the data. I mean, I almost never eat fruit. I would probably say never. And I've never had a vitamin C deficiency. I've been eating carnivore for over 7 years and I feel great. And so I don't think it's a vitamin C deficiency. And then in terms of fiber, so we actually do a lot of functional testing in our practice, which I love that we do that. And so we get to see all the short chain fatty acids. So we the recommendation is for us to eat fiber or plants that are fibrous, because then those fibers are in our colon is then converted to short chain fatty acids. And it is the short chain fatty acids that we need for utmost colon health. We see in our carnivore practice, it doesn't matter how long they've been on carnivore, the short chain fatty acid ranges are all over the map. So some people may have some, like you said, blueberries or some leafy greens. They could still be really low in short chain fatty acids. And then we see carnivores where they're not eating any plants and their short chain fatty acids are within range. So there is something more than just fiber. And also the beta hydroxybutyrate of ketones, there is a form that your colon will use. So the butyrate butter is actually derived from butyrem, and butyrem is a version of butter. And so it actually has some of the most amounts of short chain fatty acids. And then lastly, a lot of your colon uses the end mammalian cells to produce the nourishment that it needs. So there's just a lot of misinformation in terms of the need for fiber. And in fact, we see that people that reduce their fiber actually feel better gut health overall.
Yeah, in my experience with my patients, the having fiber is just you're creating gas,
Yes.
flowing in more stool.
Yeah.
So, well, I've been reassured as well with Amber O'Hearn's scholarly paper in the issue of the current opinion in endocrinology and diabetes that's some years ago now, but she did a really good job of looking at the nutrients and of course that's theoretical. The practice of using this now, well, I'm just very curious, what kinds of things have you seen fixed? And then have you seen any nutritional concerns in your practice?
Yeah. So one thing I want to say is I think that modern medicine, we tend to look a lot at labs, and I think they're important because it shows data. But I really think the biggest thing for everyone that's listening and watching is it's your symptoms. So back in the day when they didn't have testing, which testing just happened in the last 100 years, they didn't have blood labs. They didn't have these wonderful tests to check your stool. They went by symptoms. And so if you can track your symptoms, so if you start carnivore with brain fog and fatigue and this, and if you rate it from 1 to 10 and you write it down, and then every week you check in of where is it now, and if you see healing, does it really matter that you might be eating lower than the vitamin C amounts that the recommended daily allowance recommends? Until you're at a point where things are breaking or not working, then you can look at, okay, well, maybe let's do some nutrient status testing. Maybe we do further testings to get us more answers. But if you're moving in the right direction with your sleep, stool, hormones, energy, and then all the symptoms reducing, then I call that a win. And so from my practice, that's what I generally recommend. But with all that said, um, we don't see nutrient deficiencies. Some people will have some, and it might be very little, but generally speaking, the biggest thing we recommend is gut healing from the beginning. So some people may be eating a lot of protein, but they're not digesting, breaking it down, absorbing and assimilating it. So if you start with some gut supports, that could be a big thing. But generally speaking, it's not like, oh, because of carnivore, you're deficient in this. We rarely see that. We might see like folate low, but it's because maybe they have the MTHFR gene, so they need methylfolate instead of regular folate. I will say also, I'm not a big fan of organ meats. It's okay if people want to consume it, but the reason is liver in itself has a lot of vitamin A and a lot of copper, and it just causes an imbalance. Occasionally eating it, I think, is totally fine, but too much of it in excess can be not so ideal too.
Hmm. And then you're in a clinical practice. What sort of you mentioned the brain fog and fatigue and gut health.
Yeah.
Have you seen any other kinds of diseases or syndromes improve?
Yeah, we see pretty much everything. So if you think of modern disease as chronic inflammation, And every food we eat is either a friend or foe to our immune system. And our immune system is mostly lined in the gut. 70 to 80% of our immune health is in our gut. And it's because it's the one place we're allowing foreign stuff to come in. And if you, so every time you have a bite, you are creating some level of inflammation in the body, especially if the food is a foe instead of a friend. And if you eat a carnivore diet, that overall systemic inflammation is reduced. And we are actually doing blood markers on part of the immune system that shows that level of reduction. And in that reduction, in the reduction of inflammation, you start seeing people healing everything, like everything. We have a patient that had MS, hypothyroid or Hashimoto's, super sensitive to all foods, couldn't even eat dairy without a mast cell or histamine response, and now eats keto and is totally perfectly fine with it. And if they ever start showing symptoms, they'll just go stricter for a period until they start healing again. So all autoimmune, there is no person that I'd say that we would go, oh, for you, a carnivore diet is not going to help you. In fact, everyone that we have worked with, maybe they might want half a cup of berries. So one thing we see is for people that are super, super lean, that are almost underweight, those people get an appetite by adding carbohydrates. That's one thing we've seen. But other than that, there is no one that couldn't go strict carnivore if they balance things, whether it's digestive supports or the macros or the meal timings. But there's no one that we're like, okay, you shouldn't eat meat-based because this diet is not right for you. In fact, every illness we see benefits by eating a meat-based or carnivore diet.
Yeah, it almost gets you into the world of you're just a quack because
Yes.
something like can't fix everything, can it? Well, so yes, it can, but the viewer may not be ready for that yet. So in the clinic, I even will unfold it gently, not oversell that. Yes, most of these things will go away. I do see more and more people who have the mast cell problem, and they found on their own or through the internet or through you that cutting out all the other vegetables and plants controls this mast cell sensitivity. Can you tell me a little more about that? Because
Yeah.
we have a world's expert on that in our academic area here, and they're not hearing or they're not using this yet.
Yeah, so mast cells, the simplest way to share it is they're our first defense of our immune system. They are white blood cells. And then when the body has an invader, so it could be a food, it could be a toxin in the air, it could be mold in the home, it could literally be anything, then your mast cells send out chemical mediators. So they're basically messages to the rest of the body sharing, hey, there's a foreign invader, we need to go on attack. And one of those chemical mediators, and there's thousands of them, is a histamine. So I know people say histamines, but it's actually a mast cell response. And so your mast cells then are having this war with whatever the invader is, whether again it's allergies or a food you're eating. And then that war, depending on how severe that war is what the symptoms you will be feeling. So that's why people, will get hives after they eat something, or they'll get brain fog. It really depends on the person of how they react. But then once that bucket is full, so your immune system is reacting, then you will go out and maybe the allergies that used to bother you are bothering you. So now the tree pollen is actually affecting you when before it wasn't. And it's because you're adding to the mast cell war. And so the goal is, how do you reduce the noise of the mast cells? Obviously supporting your gut, carnivore diet. If you could get, so there are certain meats that have maybe more histamines than others. So aged meats, canned meats will have more. Seafood tends to have more histamines. Same with organ meat. Same with caviar. But beyond that, you can also reduce a lot of the plants too, because the plants can have histamines. And then if you're eating strict carnivore and it's still not fully going away, it's better, but not enough, then I would highly recommend looking at the environment, because the environment, so what you breathe in, right? We all know that from COVID, but that can also cause your mast cells to be slightly reacting and you don't realize it. And then add the food, add the stress, add whatever else, and now you're reacting to everything.
Yeah, I really like to see an expert in the mast cell area start shifting from just the drugs. I have one patient who was on every antihistamine known, even with prednisone, to try to calm that mast cell defense mechanism, and then on her own, cut out all the foods creating that and is off the medicine. So, uh, and sometimes it's the professional might not think anyone can do it, right? Or, well, I know doing keto can reverse type 2 diabetes, but none of my patients could do it or will want to do it, which is, if you do it in a simple way, it actually can be simple. And if you can figure out that you're not going to have hives because you're not eating peppers, this is an important thing to know rather than just medicating the green pepper response that caused your hives. It's fascinating because I didn't get much training in medical school, nor did most doctors who've gone through American medical schools and DO schools. And yet one of my patients taught me, as she was on the eating disorders ward at a local university hospital, it was for anorexia, that she in her book said, I wasn't in the right place. I was trying to tell them that my stomach was hurting and they were giving me medicines for my brain. And so she found a carnivore diet, an elimination diet. And I want people to think of this as a low carb diet. That's how it fits in the scientific evaluation. So it's not so wacko as people think that. So she basically fixed her own anorexia and she was one of my patients that I didn't know to ask the right questions. And now when someone comes in and says, when I eat this and such, it hurts, or I have hives, or I pay attention.
Yeah, it's I think that our society we want everything yesterday. So it's the quicker fix. And I think that's why people get on medications and to say, well, you have to eat this way forever sounds almost daunting, but I love using the thought of, well, why don't if you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, you've been to so many doctors, why don't you just try eating low carb or reducing a lot of the processed foods and then having meat as the center of your plate and whatever meat you want to eat, I'm totally fine with that. And then see how much you heal in a few weeks. Give it 2 weeks to a month. And then obviously 100 days would be ideal. And then you can always go back to whatever you want to do. But a lot of times when people taste healing and they feel how good it feels to feel good, they remember that, and then that's the motivation they need to want that change, because before that it does sound crazy, all meat, carnivore, that sounds insane. But if you get some of your health back, it doesn't matter what people are saying. And so I think it's just try it, track your symptoms, and if it doesn't work for you, then maybe you add some other stuff back. But if you could just try the diet, because the truth about medications is, yeah, it might work initially. It's blunting some of the immune function, but your body is the number one way to know if you have health. If you have symptoms, that's your body telling you, hey, something's wrong. Go investigate it because things are breaking down. And so when you start taking medications to mute that, in the beginning, it may make you have your life back, but long term, your immune system is smart. It is trying to fight you blunting that. And there's also something more root cause going on. And if you don't figure that out, those are the things that then lead to Parkinson's, that lead to Alzheimer's, that lead to cancers and all of these other things that we could have fixed initially by eating the diet that was meant for us to eat as humans.
Agree. Probably agree. So, but there is a condition or a time
Okay.
where people can't eat mammalian meat. And that in my area, that's called alpha-gal,
Yes.
where you have a reaction to a tick,
Yes.
tick bite, the Lone Star tick, and it is often hard to figure out. People will be in the urgent care or emergency room, sometimes with anaphylactic shock, meaning they're flat out the blood pressure, and the doctors scratch their head, don't know how to figure it out. So if someone does try carnivore or you're switching to eating meat, that initial, oh, I'm not used to it, that should go away quickly. But if you have a reaction, it's not common by any means, but there is a situation where the alpha gal reaction means you just want to stay away from mammalian meat. And I wonder how common that is in your sphere, your practice. Have you seen that?
So we do work with people with chronic Lyme. We have tested a few people with alpha gal. So we test the immunoglobulins or the IgMs. We haven't seen it positive yet, but there are people that have had alpha gal. And so my understanding with alpha gal is that if you have alpha gal and then you eat the red meat and all of the immune stuff will affect you. And then it could, like you said, cause anaphylactic shock. If you actually stay away from the red meat for a period, it could actually go through your system. And then if you support it, then you might be able to go eat meat again. If you continue to eat meat, which obviously I don't think you would do that anyway, because if you're feeling that bad, but if you could temporarily not eat it and treat the alpha gal, then you're probably able to eat it again. And then ideally you try not to get those tick bites again, because my understanding from the Lyme world is if you get a second alpha gal exposure, there is a chance that it could be a forever thing. So it's better than, so in that period, you eat the chicken and all the other meats that are not the beef and the pork. But the best thing is to be preventative. So if you know where you got the tick bite, and oftentimes they don't, but if there's a place you always go hiking, you may just want to be extra cautious in being in the outdoors so that you don't get bit by the same exposure.
Yeah, and then you can follow this with the blood test, like you said. You follow the antibody titer or the antibody level in the blood, and in most cases, it does fade over time. And yet the individual is pretty reluctant to test it, I have to say, if they've had a severe reaction. But
Right.
and yes, you can eat eggs and other low carb things, fish, for example. It's the mammalian protein. But anyway, hopefully, if you're watching this, you will never have to come across this. I just wanted to think of one instance where
Oh, it's good. It's good.
you wouldn't want to do a carnivore diet, at least temporarily. So now we're following a survey of people in carnivore Facebook groups, the method of how do we assemble information and do research? Well, people are self-assembling in groups, and we've done that for several conditions, several diets. How many people do you think have been doing a carnivore diet, and for how long? And just how confident are you that it is safe in the long run?
Yeah, so I've been carnivore for over 7 years. Now, granted, in the last, I don't know, 5 years or no, 4 years, I've added occasional, I would say it's probably less than 10 grams of carbs ever. But so I'm always in some level of
Total or net?
total. I don't go by net. I know they do. I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, so total. And even that, I think that's sometimes it's not even that. My main meals is like steak, eggs, butter, and then I try to get in omega, so I try to eat like sardines or salmon, and then I eat chicken wings, I eat pork, I eat the rainbow of meats, and sometimes I might have like a celery, but it's not that often. But I still try to share and demonstrate that I'm not perfect carnivore and I could still have health even not being perfectly strict. So, but with all that said, I think the last time I was in Sean Baker's Facebook group, I think he had almost 100,000 people. So I don't really know what the number is, but our practice, and again, these are the chronically ill where carnivore isn't fully enough with all the content that's on social media. And in our practice, we've already worked with 2,500. And these are people that are super, super sick, yet carnivore still helps them. They're just working on other stuff in addition to the diet. But in our practice, there has never been we need to get off this diet, it's not working, or somebody needs to be plant-based because of this. There has been none of that. And in fact, we've had a few plant-based people that have changed their lives from working with us and going carnivore. So I'm a firm believer in the diet. I think it is the way we're supposed to eat, whether you argue it in nutrition, gut health, your mood imbalances, autoimmune, chronic illness, everything. The answer of carnivore or a low carb diet or keto diet, it just answers a lot of the issues that we have today for modern illness.
Yeah, and so the biochemistry works. The physiology works. You fix things, and then people. The old saying is, no one really cared what you eat when you were eating the bad diet, getting sick. But now that you're better, everyone comes out of the woodwork and says that diet's killing you when
Right.
it actually fixed you, right? That's the public perception of it is something we deal with, of course, a lot. Oh, I was going to add in Ken Berry's, Dr. Berry's followers.
Okay. Yeah.
Those
That's
are
right.
doing the carnivore type of diet. So there are a lot of people, and um, even though that is happening, I think it's really important to follow in a clinical setting or some sort of consecutive sample, so you don't just follow the people who are getting benefit from it, right? So you could skew a study by just following people who had great results, because you don't know who tried and didn't have great results, right? Or like me, I'm coming to the idea that most people, just not everyone, will get better with the method that I teach them. It's just a matter of them doing it, right?
Yeah.
So have you, in your experience, never saw anyone harmed?
Not harmed. What I would say is, one thing I love about carnivore is that ultimate elimination diet. And so for some people, we know in our practice, in working with the chronically ill, there's just a subset that diet won't fix everything for them. So if they're living in a moldy home, for example, the inflammation from the mold spores and the mycotoxins will cause them to have inflammation, but they will still find benefit eating carnivore. So think about it: if you're already having inflammation from the moldy home, and it's already at a certain level, the mast cells are higher, and then you're eating cup of noodles for your dinner. I mean, you could imagine the inflammation that's added to that, versus even if your full inflammation doesn't go down because you're living in a home that has bad air quality, but then you add carnivore, the reduction of noise on the diet side is gone. And so that's where carnivore is still good. So to answer, yes, there has been no harm, but sometimes people need more help than just diet alone. But the fundamental diet we will always recommend that we have seen the most efficacy is keto/carnivore.
Well, so now that raises an interesting question. If so, just weight loss, if someone's doing it for diabetes reversal or weight loss, the fact of weight loss can make things happen. Like, I have a subset of folks who have telogen effluvium. They have hair loss because they're losing weight. It's not the particular method that they're using, any
Yes.
or the shots, the pills, the weight loss surgery and do some people lose weight and lose hair on the carnivore diet? Because if not, this could be a little tweak to prevent the hair loss if you've never seen that.
Yeah, the number one thing we see is especially women undereat. So you're hangry your whole life, right? So I think all the people that have a little bit of weight on them are the ones that diet the most. So I know people think, oh, you're lazy, those negative stigmas. It's actually not true. And I know that because I've worked and I've had my own eating disorder. Like, trust me, I try to get over my eating disorder too. But it is so their whole lives, they're trying to get off this diet cycle and they want to eat cleaner, and they just don't have the right tools or the right diet. And then as soon as they go on keto or carnivore, they're not as hungry because their insulin's going down, their blood sugar's regulating. And so then they tend to undereat. And and there's still this stigma of, well, maybe I could eat just a little bit less fat, because if I eat too much fat, fat makes me fat. There's that myth. And so what we see in our practice is there will be women that maybe undereat on a carnivore diet. So they're undereating protein and then undereating fat. So their calories are super low. And then in 3 months' time, their hair may be coming out. And so it could be several things. It could be the diet change itself. So going from a standard American diet to a keto diet will absolutely change things. Your body is now using ketones more than glucose. And so that shift may cause a stress on your body temporarily, which will cause your hair to, shed. But then long term, so if your hair is still shedding a year in or 6 months in, it oftentimes is because people are undereating and undereating fat. We need to get our energy a lot of times from the ketones or fat. And we have noticed that people undereating, and then that impacts their thyroid. So when we hear carnivore ruined my thyroid or keto ruined my thyroid, no, it's oftentimes that the tool was not used properly. So I would just make sure that people are eating sufficiently.
Well, then, and I just came back from a meeting of doctors who are just all using the shots now. And this is so much easier. And well, you don't have to buy a shot. You don't have to worry about the side effects and all that. So you all keep in mind, if you're watching this, you're always comparing one method to another method. And, of all the ways that I've seen to reverse diabetes and lose weight, the carnivore or keto is just, it's the best because your hunger's gone, right? So, with that, I wondered if those main side effects that I asked for each visit, constipation and muscle cramps. How do you handle those?
Yeah, so constipation, the number one reason we see that is also under eating, or if they're eating too lean of meats without enough fat. So you're not having the peristalsis or your colon moving, and then also under drinking water. So the other thing we notice is when you're not eating sugar, salt, and fat together, you're not as thirsty. So people tend to underdrink water. I'm not going to say how much to drink, but if you could ideally drink the ideal weight that you're supposed to be, and then half of your ounces in that. So if I'm supposed to ideally be 100 pounds, I would ideally try to hit 50 ounces of water. It's going to be nuanced though in that, but if you are constipated, I would try the hydration. And then you could even try a little bit of sole water in the morning to see if the minerals will help the peristalsis. And then ensuring that you're eating sufficiently. So making sure you're eating enough protein and fat. I think most people that see the way I eat, even though I'm lean or on the leaner side, people will often that are not carnivores say, wow, you eat a lot of meat. That's the first thing that people say to me. So I just think that it's a little bit more meat than we're used to. I think that as an example, if you weigh about 130 pounds, you should be eating at least 20 ounces of meat a day. I mean, I know that's so general, but just making sure you're eating sufficiently. And then, and so usually we will see constipation improve with that. And then in terms of electrolytes, it depends. So if they are doing carnivore and they are eating sufficient salt and their blood sugar is balanced and they're not super stressed, we will start testing for aldosterone or ADH or antidiuretic hormone. And sometimes that can be imbalanced because of environmental illness and it has nothing to do with the diet. So what I love about carnivore is you remove all the noise. So everything starts quieting down. And then if you're starting to have electrolyte balances that don't rebalance after years of being on the diet, like I take 0 electrolytes and I'm 7 years into this diet. But if I ever feel leg cramps coming in, headache, I'll take some of the sole water. Or I'll take an electrolyte powder, but I rarely ever take it because I don't need it. My body has assimilated. But for people that can't balance even 5 years out or a few years out, it could be something with the environment because the antidiuretic hormone or the aldosterone is what tells the kidneys to retain water or not. And when you're eating low carb, you retain less water. So when you're eating carbs, since you have more water, it mutes the imbalance that aldosterone or ADH is doing. But when you reduce the carbs, that imbalance that was there is now being pronounced. And so when people are like, oh, the low carb diet makes me feel electrolyte imbalances, or now you're aware of an imbalance that was always there.
That's great, great advice. The teaching that I remember from Steve Finney
Oh, yeah.
is 5 to 7 grams of sodium per day if you're fully keto adapted and active. And but yeah, those are very good recommendations.
And we recommend that too. In general, we recommend it.
More salt, more salt.
Yes.
Well, unless you have a salt sensitive condition like high
But see, but I challenge the salt sensitivity. So if people are balanced at a certain point and they're still sensitive to salt, so they're like, I only feel better on carnivore if I eat 0 salt, I think there's something imbalanced in their system. Because if you think of the average person can eat salt and your body is able to regulate the salt and potassium and all of the, we have levers in our system that say, okay, more water, release, kidneys release. And so if somebody's like, no, the only way I could do carnivore or low carb is 0 salt. The question is why? So if 95% of the people could do carnivore with salt, why can't you? And I believe there's a bigger root cause that they haven't investigated. But still, you could do what's working for you. But
God, well,
yeah.
I like your curiosity and wanting to fix things. And show, we're nearing the end of the time. Can you show me the books and tell me a little about your books, please?
Yeah, so that's Carnivore Cure. I don't have one in front of me, but it's so that one is a lot more of the science of why carnivore is ideal. It touches on a lot of the hot topics that are actually coming out lately of food dyes, aluminum, fluoride, even some of the adjuvants in vaccines. It's all touched on there. And then why a carnivore elimination diet actually has enough nutrition. And then it has the elimination protocol. I'll give you a link. We have a cheat sheet to our elimination protocol, even if you don't want to buy the book. And then I have a beginner's guide, which is it still shares some of the science, but it's a lot more simplified because, some people don't care about all the science. They're just like, tell me what to do. And so it shares a little bit about if you eat processed foods and why it's not necessarily ideal, and then still getting to the elimination diet.
Great. And how do people find you online?
Yeah, so I'm known as Nutrition with Judy. I have a podcast, I have a YouTube channel, but our private practice is called Empower Functional Health. And so you could go to Nutrition with Judy and find everything. I'm on most of the major social media platforms as well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending time with me and teaching me. Final thought, like say you're one of my patients is watching. And
Yeah, and thank you, Dr. Westman. I mean, your book, Keto Clarity and Support, that book also helped me so much in opening my eyes. It was written in a way that I understood cholesterol so differently than what I believed. And so your book indirectly changed my life. So thank you for that. And then all the other books afterward, your End Your Carb Confusion. And so now I'm serving back. So I just hope you realize the work that you do has tremendous value. I think for anybody, it is not about perfection. It is not, I know that even my journey seems so magnificent and rainbows and unicorns. And I'm telling you, we work with the people that it's not rainbows and unicorns. And I hope that you realize that this diet can bring so much healing, and it's not always perfect for everybody, and that is okay. It doesn't have to be a rainbows and unicorn. Try to find healing. If you're tired of the way you're living, if you don't have enough energy, if your brain fog is so high, then trying a diet, which is something you could start in the next meal, just try it and consider, because if you're not living the life that you're meant to or you want to, then we have to change something about that. And it is not a medicine or a magic pill that will fix that. It is the slow and steady trying a diet that can change your life. And it's given me my life back. And I hope that the people that are listening and watching can try it to see how much of their life that they can get back.
thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Westman.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. It's always fun to go on to other people's podcasts and just chat about what I learn and what I share and why I even share. I hope that this conversation gave you a little bit of insight into how you can heal and how you can use carnivore to work for you. Remember, there is no perfect carnivore. There is no carnivore that's going to fix everybody. It's finding the carnivore or the perfect diet that works for you and allows you to be more consistent. All right, guys, make sure to eat a lot of meat. Take care of your bodies because it is the only place you have to live. I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.